Good to go.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's episode of the Roundtable here on the Grayson Network. My name is Danny Ellyson and I am your host. Today is March 3rd. On tonight's topics, we should visit the conversations about Trump's call out of rhinos during the CPAC. Also, in Chicago, lunacy, craziness, and absolute out-of-pocket thought processes where teachers are now saying they'll go back to work as soon as they all get vaccinated. And then on the other hand, in the state of Texas, Texas is wide open for business. Here we go. Somebody finally has a sense of committal to the Constitution. Congress presents a $1.9 trillion bill, but not a single GOP vote. Thank you to those that are refusing to vote on the debt for our children. And for tonight's hot topic, what do you think? Well, we're going to find out tonight what our panelists think about Trump running again in 2024. And also tonight, a special here on our show, Derrick Grayson will be presenting and introducing the Constitutional Coalition organization. So tonight, to kick off the show, as we always do, first, I'm going to go over to Alex Johnson. Alex, give us a taste of what's going on here in the state from a legal perspective. You have 7 minutes. Welcome to the show.
Thanks again for having me. It's always good to be on. And there's legality and morality are two things that are sort of tied together these days. And it's something where I think that in Georgia, when you mentioned all of the topics we're going to be going through tonight, talking about like masks and vaccines and, some of the politicians being rhinos, and of course our national spending, I think that what we really need to ask is what draws all of these things together? Like, why is it that we're all okay with the government, and the government is intrinsically like it's about the law, it's about what's legal and what's not, what the government will send people to arrest you for or lock you up for. What is it that draws all of these things together? And I think that right now, our society, what we need to be focused on is trying to figure out what the objective truth is. Like, what is true, what is false, what is moral, what is not. And what we're seeing through all those examples you gave and what's going on in Georgia is that isn't what the people in various leadership positions are doing. And that could be either people in charge of companies, or more frequently, it's the politicians. You look at other nations and they, to some extent, do have some commonality. I mean, I've visited Japan and have friends around the world. And a lot of nations, people do the right thing because they all agree on what that thing is. But here in the United States, we haven't had a common understanding for a while in recent history regarding, like, for example, masks and vaccines. I mean, it used to be, and I think it should be, uncontroversial that the government shouldn't be able to force you to do these things. They shouldn't be able to force people to have to wear masks. They shouldn't be able to force people to have things injected in their bodies. I mean, if you look at the left's pro-abortion stances, they're very much about bodily autonomy and freedom of choice, right until you start getting into the idea that, oh yeah, but we should be able to force people to take vaccines or other medications or medical treatments. And that's just intrinsically wrong to say that it's okay to kill a human and justify it with bodily integrity, but then say, oh yeah, but we don't respect bodily integrity by making you take medical procedures. And I think that that's where you see it in some news recently around Atlanta, that there is no real understanding of moral rights and wrongs anymore. My law partner, who's not on tonight, Catherine Bernard, she posted a story about a shooting that happened in South DeKalb County. And what happened is a gentleman was eating at Waffle House, sees outside some kids trying to break into and steal, to either do something with his car. He goes outside with a firearm and tries to stop them. Now, the legal implications of that, the way our laws are currently set up, isn't something that I don't do criminal law. I do personal injury and civil law and civil rights law. It's not something that I would really think about or care about commenting on. But what's disturbing is the reaction to it by a lot of people on the left is, well, you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have like tried to stop them with a firearm. And I think that to some extent, we need to recognize that someone who's doing something wrong in this situation is the person trying to rob somebody and steal their vehicle. The idea that somehow we need to be judging someone protecting their property, or we need to be judging someone for choosing not to have a vaccine, or judging someone for choosing not to wear a mask, is a disturbing trend that threatens to undermine our entire legal system. Because if you have jurors who think that, that a victim of a crime is someone who should be going to jail, or that someone who believes in freedom and liberty needs to be shouted down or shunned or locked up or somehow treated badly, I mean, that undermines our entire legal system that relies on jurors and judges to have an understanding, an intrinsic understanding of morality and right and wrong. I mean, you apply the notorious example of the like Hitler and Nazism. You look at that and people always say, well, no, that couldn't happen here, or they're already saying it is happening here. They miss the greater issue, which is that it isn't like Hitler who created a Nazi Germany. It's the German people who did that, and they allowed Hitler to take power. And that's because on some level, they must have stopped realizing what was right and what was wrong. And that's where I fear our society, we aren't there yet, but a lot of people are losing that. And I think that they're getting shouted down and they're afraid of losing their jobs for daring to speak up. So if that continues, we're going to lose our legal system and we'll lose our society. But a lot of people are.
Alex, brilliantly said. And honestly, from my landscape, that leads to a constitutional question. And so staying on your topic, let's go over to Brian Slawinski real quick. And Derrick, we're coming to you after that. But Brian, Alex is mentioning the constitutionality of a lot of this mess that we're dealing with at the local legislative, state legislative, even a legal parallel in the federal, right? So mass mandates, forced vaccinations, all of these different things that we now as Americans are being faced with that we have to succumb to. And under the articles and everything I understand of the Constitution, Brian, and I believe I have the right to say no.
Yes, I agree with you. And it should be always be voluntary. I mean, we had Texas. Now it's gotten rid of the mask mandate, but obviously Texas is the one that also put it in place as well. Same in Mississippi, they're getting rid of the mask mandate there as well. I think any of the things that Alex was talking about are so true, and we're going down a rabbit hole, and if we don't start coming out of that rabbit hole, we're going to be in big trouble in this country. We got to start pushing our constitutional rights and let everybody know what our Constitution is about, and that the Bill of Rights was put in place to be a check on government, not a check on us.
Well, that could have been said better. And Derrick, coming over to you, I know you're a 2A supporter. Alex also mentioned, in South DeKalb County, if the reference is proper, the blame is being placed on a citizen defending themselves against a burglary or a robbery, and they use their Second Amendment rights to do it, but yet they're penalized and they're potentially prosecuted for possessing a gun in the United States of America. What say you?
Well, first off, here in Georgia, I am perfectly confident that if I found somebody breaking in my car and I attempted to stop them and they resisted, I would be perfectly and legally within my right to defend myself and use deadly force if I feel that my life is in danger. And at that point, when the police come and arrest me, I'll tell them, hey, let's go, take me on downtown. And then I'm going to call my lawyer, Alex Johnson. And okay, Alex, you know what it is. Better to be judged by 12 better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6. So that is my stance. I posted a story a couple of times, the same story about it's either Arizona or Utah. It's slipping my mind, but that state has said we will not enforce any of Segregation Joe's Second Amendment controls. We're just not going to do it. They made it a point to say that. And my point in posting that, Danny, was states can do that. You know, yes, we have a supreme constitution, and states, every state has their own state constitution. The deal is any laws that the federal government passes, first, they must be within the confines of the Supreme Constitution. And if a state deems that they are not in the confines of the Supreme Constitution and their Constitution, they can reject those laws. That is a power that states have forgotten. But Alex, I'm sure he will attest to it, as well as Brian. We know that states capitulate with the federal government because of the money that they receive from them.
Yep.
Absolutely. So that comes back to you, Alex Johnson. And if I'm not mistaken, in the legalese written, and I'm not going to cite the article because I don't practice law as much as you do, Alex, but I am pretty familiar, and I'm certain that Georgia state law provides that your vehicle in termination or in the definition of defending oneself and their home, that a vehicle is considered an extension of the home. So in a car hijacking situation or a burglary, vehicle breaking and entering, those things that you have legal right under the state laws of Georgia to defend your vehicle the same way that you would your home. Am I mistaken on that, Alex?
I mean, that is a general statement that is oftentimes true. I mean, there are some issues with it in that, you know, the police are able to search your car without a warrant, for example, even though it is a extension of your home, but they do need a reason to do it since it's on a road. I mean, it's pretty complicated on that, but I will say that I think that what's tough about the legal side is that what's legal is not always necessarily what is being considered moral. And I think that in a situation where someone's breaking into a car, I mean, people right now, I think a lot of the debate is over, well, is it okay to shoot someone who's damaging property or stealing for property? And I think that the answer to that isn't whether or not it should is legal or not. The question is whether or not that's something that we should be going after the victim for. You know what I mean? Like, it's one thing if you know, it's somehow a setup, but I mean, we should be blaming the person violating someone's rights by trying to rob them. And I don't think that the way the law is currently structured and reads really goes that route. I think the law, as passed by a lot of these sort of spineless politicians, have really made it into something where, you know, we need to be afraid of how we calibrate our response to criminal activity instead of realizing, wait a second, I want the police response to be calibrated because they work for me. I don't want them going around using excessive force on people. But if a private citizen has their own stuff or their own life in danger, I mean, the person who attacked them is the one who I would think in an ideal situation, they shouldn't have anything to worry about. Like, Derrick shouldn't have to worry like, oh, I might be going to jail. Like, no, I mean, if Derrick's a victim, he shouldn't be worrying about going to jail. The police should say, well, we wouldn't have killed him, but you know, you were a victim, and you know, we'll be in touch if we think you did something actually wrong.
Well, Alex, I would agree with everything, but semantics are a big deal. And, you know, as the host of the show, I've got to find the semantics to argue with you. And in that, I would simply say that the defense of the law is not on behalf of the victim. It is on behalf of the citizen, freeborn and constitutionally protected. I am not a victim. And if I pull my weapon and somebody is causing me to do harm, I am not a victim. I am a citizen, freeborn and protected by the Constitution of this land. I will never hire you to protect me as a victim advocate. I will only hire you to protect me as a constitutionally protected citizen.
I like
that being
that.
said, moving on to our next piece. I see all the yeses, like all of a sudden I get a point or two, but you know, maybe a thumbs up, a thumbs down every once in a while. But here we go. Let's move on. Let's talk about something that's a little bit more fun, folks. And I'm going to bring everybody on. Alex, I want to stay with you. I know you've got a timeline tonight, but I want you to kick this round off. Here we go. In CPAC. CPAC was a phenomenal segment. If you were able to watch anybody speaking, all the way from the state halls of Congress out of Texas If you watch the president speak, if you looked at the dignitary list that wasn't even invited, Mitch McConnell, or if you look at people that refuse to present, former Vice President Pence, so on and so forth, it was a great presentation of blood-bearing Americans that were willing to come down to constitutional value. Now, there were a couple loose comments out there, and I'm not going to ordain all of them. I will agree that, South America being are very beautiful places to visit, and in my opinion, prettier than being in Orlando. Ted Cruz, there's my yield to you. However, the most impactful piece was President Trump coming back to the surface, not only announcing the possibilities of a potential run in 24, and we'll discuss that later, but really the meat and potatoes of him going down a list of names. He identified rhinos with a vengeance, a passion, and with what I would call a sense of holy obligation. Alex Johnson, what would you say?
I mean, what I would say is that what you just ended on, talking about him listing off the rhinos, I mean, that's something we need more politicians to do. I mean, as we're speaking, I looked up the list where he said that they're grandstanders and that they're warmongers, and he's calling out these people for what they did, and that's what we need to see happen. We need to see people who don't stand for good policy to be primaried. I mean, when he called out the bad politicians, it was after about an hour and 15 minutes of speaking. And most of what he was saying earlier was about all the horrendous impacts of what the Democrats are doing with government. And I think that's where we have a lot of people who are like, oh, it's the Democrats, that's fine. I mean, that's what you have the Democrats saying. And that is going back to my original point. The lack of actual objective truth and knowledge is killing us. And luckily, a lot of Republicans are listening to President Trump, and hopefully they will come out and try to stop these bad politicians. I mean, here in Georgia, I mean, this month is the start of the Republican convention cycle where people could work to essentially be involved with and take over the GOP. And I say that meaning that getting principled people into office. I mean, that's what we each can do. And hopefully people will be doing that. Last weekend, I saw a whole bunch come out for a training session that I was helping with to make that happen.
Well, Alex, thank you for laying that plug. And folks, if you are watching tonight, or if you watch this later on in the broadcast, I would ask that you would heed the words of Mr. Alex Johnson. And that is, if there is a time, now is the time. From the panels of getting involved in delegations, your county seats are up. The meetings are taking place now. The commissions are already scheduled all the way up to the state level. It is imperative. If you want something to be done differently, start at your city level, jump into your county conventions, get involved. Come 2024, even on the back end of 2022, in congressional races, as a former congressional candidate, I will tell you, you can complain all you want, but you have no dog in the fight if you don't start now. Derrick, Grayson, coming over to you. Alex Johnson is laid out a beautiful recap of Trump's synopsis, if you will, in his call out. But you know what? I have to admit I was a little disappointed, because in the call out list, there were names that I felt were worthy of mention, more so than those that were. Derrick, what say you?
Well, of course, you and I agree. So here's the thing. You have people who support Trump, and you have people that support Trump and Trump can do no wrong. And you have people that support Trump and defer to Trump's judgment in certain situations. I had a conversation with somebody today about that. And I won't mention who it is, but he essentially said that the game is rigged, Trump knows it, and some people, you have to play the game with them even though you know that they are not worthy. Now, I saw Scott put in the chat box naming names when you were speaking, Danny. That is something that was a part of our campaign slogan. I will go to Washington, D.C., and I will name names. I will take a broom, a whistle, and I'm going to go in and name those names so that you know who's doing it to you. So many of us love the names that Trump named, but we would love to have seen him mention many, many of the others that operate under the cover but pretend to do something or to be something that they are not. And the last comment I'll make on that, David Perdue, a millionaire, filed the paperwork and paid the fee to run for U.S. Senate here in Georgia. Then a week later, put out a statement. My wife and I, through prayer, blah, 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 have decided we won't run. Well, I can tell you as a Christian, you do the prayer first. Then, when you feel that God has answered your prayer or you're going to step out on faith, whatever methodology you use, then you move forward. And my response to that for people, well, he decided he just doesn't want to be involved in the DC swamp. Well, I don't recall him resigning when he was up there involved, and he ran again. So I doubt that's the reason. I believe that David Perdue was told, you will not be getting the Trump nomination. Go on and sit down. Now, I'll take that to the grave. I believe that is exactly what happened with David Perdue. Alex, you were the first person on Danny's show to say the two words, kingmaker. You remember that show, Alex? Nod your head. And I have picked up that ball and I've been running with it. Trump may not have used the word kingmaker, but Trump has declared, I will back candidates that primary these Republicans. That's kingmaker. And that is why the Republican Party fears Trump. We talked about that the last time, Danny, on your show, that people don't want Trump to be a kingmaker. They don't want Trump tapping somebody on the shoulder or giving them the nod, because they know there are 75, 80 million people spread across this country that voted for Trump. And those people will follow Trump's word. And Danny, I said my only fear is that an undeserving rhino gets a nomination in a primary. That's my only concern. Thank you.
And I'm right there with you, honestly, Derrick, and I've got to tell you, kingmaker. So, Alex, Derrick brought you up. I've got to come to you. Brian, stand by. I'm coming back to you. But the kingmaker statement itself, a lot of people are oblivious to the actual meaning, right? What does this mean? And what jockey power does Trump have? Well, Derrick just alluded to it, and that is he has a platform. He's a former president of the United States. He's a future president of the United States, and arguably the rightful president time now here in the United States. And he even yielded to saying maybe he'll beat them a third time. Now, that being said, as a kingmaker, as all of these coins turn and all of this stuff comes about in life, we've heard the Q, we've heard the Anon, we've heard the conspiracy, we've heard the Alex Jones, we've heard all of these things. The truth of the matter is the kingmaker is the definition that reveals the power that Trump actually has. So Alex, I will yield to you to explain.
I think when we talk about kingmaker, I mean, right now, the GOP for years, and this is a weakness within the Republican Party, is they have over the course of my last decade, probably over the course of my life, have gradually stopped having any sort of idea of holding politicians accountable for anything. If you could buy your way through a primary, you end up being the nominee, and that's for a local office or for president. Donald Trump threw that on its head. He called out the fake Republicans. He called out the corruption in DC, and he won the nomination. And he has gotten millions of followers and people that believe in him and are loyal to him for doing those things. And I think because of that, whoever he's supporting, it's more than enough people to win most primary elections. And as a side note, one thing I would love to see happen is the GOP start picking the nominees through the convention cycle, because people like those on this call right now are more likely to be picking principled people to be the Republican nominees. But due to Trump's strength and following, if the party were to nominate someone right now who was not supported by President Trump, they wouldn't win a general because people would stay home. A Democrat would end up winning over the Republican if Donald Trump said, hey, this person's terrible, don't vote for them. I think that would cost even Republicans in relatively safe seats the election. So when we talk about kingmaker, to me, it seems in most situations, if you do not have independent loyalty, or if you are not supported by Donald Trump, you are unlikely to win as a Republican in a race in this country, unless you have an independent base of support. There are a few politicians, I think, who have it, but none of the ones that Donald Trump listed in his speech at CPAC.
And Alex Johnson. That's why we love you here on the show. You've got to argue both sides of the coin. So in the Kingmaker, the likelihood of somebody like me running for the United States Congress again here in the 8th District of Georgia and being successful is slim, solely because the incumbent has never been called out by the President of the United States, former President of the United States, and I don't have the endorsement of the President. So Alex is alluding, and Mr. President, Donald Trump, from all of us here on the panel, if you watch this and you see this, we would ask that you would come out here into the districts of Georgia and elsewhere and find candidates that you are willing to get behind that are not establishment woes. Alex Johnson, thank you for joining us tonight. We know that you've got a limited time. God bless you. We'll see you the next show. And always, we thank you for your contribution. Brian Slawinski.
Thank you.
Absolutely, brother. Brian Slawinski, coming over to you. Let's shift a little bit. Let's talk about what's going on in Chicago, right? So there are people out there that are simply throwing constitutional rights to the curb. Now, that being said, what's more concerning is that the teachers are using their positions in power of being employed and in their union to surrender the constitutional rights of our children. They are saying that they will go back to work when all of them are vaccinated. This seems to be a problem for me. What say you?
That's a problem for me too. Just to add on the comment while I was still thinking about it, when Alex was talking about how the Republicans should endorse people, they don't do it in Georgia, but in other states they actually do endorse via conventions. Then they allow people to be challenged in the primaries. That's how it just depends on the state. That's in certain states do that.
Georgia could graduate to the level of being friendly in politics.
Well, I doubt that. They're not friendly when it comes to that. As far as Chicago goes, I have a problem with somebody else stepping on somebody else's rights. We will teach but only if everybody has a vaccination. Well, what about the rights of the children? What about the rights of the parents to know what's going on with their children? I mean, the children have the right to get medications from school at a certain age, or an abortion or anything like that, but it's okay to say, hey, well, we can jump all over the children's rights because we're the teachers and we need to be protected.
Right, and that's my point. So constitutionally, right, the kids are protected by way of their parents, proper counsel and representation, legal access to representation. That's what parents
should be that way, but it's not. That's the whole problem. Is the age of they keep lowering the age of consent for different things.
Well, the age of consent this day is irrelevant. Now it's if you're birthed, you have a right to be a boy in a girl's locker room.
Yeah.
So it's the age of consent is relevant at this point. But I would argue that the teachers are out of line, even as a union. Solely because their demand to be vaccinated and everybody in the school to be vaccinated is a forced position on all of humanity in the Chicago school system, and dare I say in the state of Illinois, that should be pushed back on at every level, should it not?
Yes, but here's the whole thing: is the teachers union is all about power, and they want to exercise that power as any way that they can, because the more power that they have, the more power they'll have when it comes to negotiating their contract the next time. So if they stand together on this and they get this to happen, then they'll have more and more power when it comes to asking for more money and more benefits when the contract comes up.
And there you hit the nail on the head. The power of the union to demand economics from state government and federal government, and
On the
at
local
all cost, they will find access to greater and better for themselves at the cost of our children.
Correct.
Derrick, Grayson, coming over to you. Brian, stay with us. We're coming back to you on other topics, but Derrick, we're going to segue out of that. So we see the collapse of Illinois, the unions coming in, the school system throtting to take over our children, our rights, and the economics involved. And on the other side, let's go to the polar opposite. We've got the great state of Texas, where it sounds like it's a great place to go and stay in a 5-star resort this week and possibly go out and hunt in the prairies, find a couple deer and, hang out, light a fire before summer comes in. And for the exception of the fact that their power grid consistently is, going down and being compromised. Derrick, what say you?
Danny, you got to come back to me again with the question, man, because I really don't. Are you asking me about Chicago? What I kind of got lost.
I was segueing out of Chicago. I think Brian wrapped it up, but I'm coming to you about the excitement about Texas. Should the other states get in line? I mean, let's talk honestly. Texas was just devastated. Their power grid went down, ice out of nowhere, worst weather ever, and they're standing up saying everything's bigger in Texas. Our ice storms, our politics, our agendas, and dare I say, below the belt, their pair. They're saying they don't care what anybody has to say. The whole state's unlocking. Should we all be on that level, Derrick?
So let me say, really there are 3 things I want to say about Texas. But Danny, the question, the answer to your question is yes. Everybody should get in line and start doing it. Now, why is that happening? One, Florida has shown everybody you were the fools, not Florida. Florida opened up when everybody else was still going through all of their changes, mask mandates and shutdowns and whatnot. Florida said, no, we're going to open up. We're not going to destroy businesses. We're going to help businesses survive and strive against the pandemic. And they won. So it's hard to argue with lockdowns and masks when you have a state that is flourishing. Georgia is semi there. We still have some issues. We go to some places, you walk in, well, sir, you got to have on a mask, and you turn around and you walk back out the door. We had a meeting this weekend, and Danny will tell you, we chose another restaurant to go to. They wanted us, but anyway, I digress. The other thing I want to say about Texas, Abbott put all of the mask mandates in place, but with all that has happened, Danny, with the storm, the devastation that they're experiencing, to continue in that madness when he knows that Florida is surviving, okay, and thriving, he knows he can't come back out with those same types of conditions because people are struggling. People died. And to put that on top of that would be a huge mistake. And Abbott knows it. He was foolish in the first place. Now he's trying to rectify that mistake. And the third thing I wanted to say, Ted Cruz, and some people got mad with me. Essentially, you know what the press did to him. Ted Cruz is not a freshman senator. Man's been there a while. Ted Cruz knows what the word optics mean. Okay. Now, when you know what that means, whether you control what goes on in the state or not financially, those are still your constituents. And the optics say, my family and we're going to escape from Texas and go and enjoy ourselves down on the beach. Just looks bad. Something that could have waited. If his home had no power, well, you got the money, Cruz. Go and get your hotel. Nobody's going to be mad with you if you can go and get a hotel to stay in, because that's what any other citizen would do if they had that option. So we're not mad about you on that. But here are optics again. AOC and the guy that ran against Ted Cruz raised $3 or $4 million, maybe $5 million to give away. That's optics, and it looks good because they're doing something. Ted Cruz should have been doing the same thing. So AOC, the guy Buttigieg, yeah, AOC and Buttigieg. No, Buttigieg was George. But anyway, I'm getting off. Whatever the guy's name was that ran against Ted Cruz, they presented a great picture for the people.
Well, you're talking about Beto O'Rourke. So
yes.
Right. So the point of the matter is you hit 3 points, Derrick, and I'm going to yield that little bit of time to you while we're here on our agenda. But look, let's tilt back. If any of us were covered in ice and our power was out and we couldn't get out to the mailbox and we had to stack the airfare and the accessibility to go to the Caribbean, we would have all done it. Let's give the man a ride a little bit. Now, there was more of an elegant way to do it. However, he does have an obligation in his position to be different. And keep in mind that the body that he represents is only 100 people nationwide out of over 300 million people. So, statistically, let's just be simplistic and give the man a pass on that. It's ridiculous to me that we're even entertaining picking at him on it. Now,
well, I'm not going to give him a pass because optics mean a lot. So
optics,
he's not a freshman senator. He should have known better.
Optics from President Trump. We can argue that from anybody in the past 300 years of this country. We can argue that when we stand before Almighty God in our own character and our own lives. Optics do hold value, and regardless of the reach that you have, simplistically, what he did compromised his position. It did. I'm not siding with him on that, but I am arguing there was a better way for him to do it, rather it be on a Delta airliner. Now, moving on to another piece that you were talking about, down with Governor DeSantis in Florida. Governor DeSantis did figure it out early on, and for our folks watching tonight, just an arguable point. There is news circulating that, Trump runs in 2024 and that DeSantis would be the vice president. I need to clarify something in the Constitution. The vice president and president cannot come from the same host state. Both of them are residents, licensed residents of the state of Florida. It is impossible. The Constitution will not allow it. So if you were to see both of them come from one state in that side of things, then going ahead and hang the flag upside down, we're in distress. The Constitution states that cannot happen. So get your hopes over it. Either DeSantis runs or Trump comes back in 2024. Now, that being said, we're talking about the state of Texas, and you are absolutely right. The governor there messed up in the beginning, but I think the reconciliation that he is finding now is in the band of brothers that we're finding across the South. Earlier, somebody had mentioned Mississippi. Mississippi has stood up and said, we are done. Louisiana is right behind them. The South is taking over and saying, this is enough. We are finished hurting and suffering. We're not receiving the aid that you claimed that we were going to get, federal government. All we're getting is vaccination. So that leads me to my next question, Derrick. This vaccination push is not just the Chicago school system. It is now, we've got vaccines. And if you take this, we can get rid of the social distancing and the masks. Well, it continued. And now they're saying, you've got to take a secondary vaccine for it to really kick in. But the masks and the social distancing are still there. And now Pfizer comes out and says, you might have to take a booster, something else. Derrick, what else are they going to add to this list of things you have to do to simply be able to show your face?
Well, anybody that has listened to me knows that from day one, when this pandemic started and they started talking about a vaccine, I said I used to have a phrase that I would post, one man, our economy, one election. That was the purpose of Corona. So when you understand that, you can see the bigger picture. And there are some end results that they wanted from the pandemic. One, they wanted Trump gone, and they wanted to say he did a bad job. Well, now, in saying he did a bad job, all of these vaccines that are available now, Danny, that was Trump's plan. And I heard a recording of Trump where they played Trump saying, well, we should have enough vaccines for everyone by April. Well, Joe Biden comes out yesterday and says, well, we should have vaccines available for everyone early May. That's Trump's plan, and he knows it. But again, I'm not taking a vaccine, Danny. You couldn't melt it down and pour it on me. And I tell anybody, don't take the vaccine, especially if you are a healthy adult. This is all about getting people vaccinated. And the end result of it, Danny, when they start saying, oh, we need proof that you got vaccinated before we can allow you to return to work, then my words will ring true, Danny. My words will ring true. They want to get every single adult vaccinated, and they are looking to have, once they have done that, a record of that for tracking. Hank Sullivan, on one of our very first shows, Danny, when we were running, presented an application that has already been developed that would allow people to know whether or not you have been vaccinated. Hey, man, and Danny, you and I have talked about this. This is a type of mark of the beast. When people can force you to wear masks, that was a test. When people can fear you into going and getting a vaccine that is having negative impact. I read a story where 3 dozen women, after taking the vaccine, had spontaneous abortions. But you don't hear about that in the news. Countless people that have died after taking the vaccine. Hank Aaron died after getting the vaccine, but the media did not connect the two. But let somebody that's elderly die that has not taken a vaccine, the first thing they're going to say is they died from corona. So I'm going to yield back to you, Danny, but those are my feelings. I am not taking a vaccine.
Okay, so and you know what, I agree with you. And on my close, I'm going to go over the temptation of the mark of the beast in this, Derrick, and you as a pastor and myself co-seating as a pastor. That'll be in my closeout, and we're going to have that argumentative stance. But I believe that things have been revealed at this time. Brian, coming over to you, Derrick had made a nasty mention, and boy, it was spot on about the intent of this vaccination distribution. The point is to get everybody in order. Now, we have learned throughout the history of humanity, from filing your taxes so that you can get your tax refund, from paying into the system, signing contracts and documents, making your mark, agreeing to sign federal and state statute forms, agreeing to present yourself to school systems and submit yourself to forced vaccinations already. Your kids can't go to school without a vaccination record. You've got to go in there, have the MMR, all these different things, getting your flu shot, following suit for your insurance coverage, so on and so forth. We can talk about forced vaccinations. We already live in the years of forced vaccination. That's been going on for some time. But now, because it is isolated, it is experimental, and it is in your face, we start changing our position. We start fighting back. I think that's a beautiful thing. Brian, what say you?
Well, I think it's your right to fight back, and especially when the vaccinations have been basically very experimental at the stage they're at right now, and they got kind of hurried up through the process. So we really don't know how safe they really are. We can take Joe Biden's word for it, but something, he forgets what he says in the next word. So we need to stand up for our rights, and this is one way we can do that, is because it was so experimental that they ran it through the process. The process was quick. They say it's safe. They say it's effective. But with any kind of medicine that you take, you always have the chance for reactions and bad reactions.
But
and
Brian, we could come back and we could go even deeper in layers, and we could say that this is not a new vaccine. This is something they've been working on for a long time. We can go in the weeds talking about the conspiracies behind this. I mean, everybody does understand that coronavirus itself, as we know it today, was patented, correct? And that it is a patented and licensed virus that was patented some time ago. And I'm not going on the Q or the Anon. I'm talking about federal doggone records.
Well,
This was
it's COVID-19. That means there's 19 different versions of it.
exactly. So, and when they create the virus, the first thing they do is go into manufacturing to find the antivirus, right? Is it
And
not?
they go to patent that so they can make money selling the vaccines.
Okay. So at least we're on the same page there. And that is another topic for another show without us, getting into the weeds, and I'll be able to source it better on the next one. But we're on the topic of former president, current president, and future President Trump. Let's talk about his leading into 2024, Brian. What does this look like? What does the ticket look like?
Well, right now, the ticket is Trump's if he wants it. I mean, if he's running again, nobody else is going to challenge him.
So who's his VP? We saw what Pence would do for him. I mean, who does he call out to?
It won't be Pence, I can tell you that.
Are we reaching out to Texas? Is that what we're seeing right now? The possibilities that maybe a local senator from Texas jumps in on the ballot?
No, I think it's going to be something strategic, but also setting somebody up. I think DeSantis would be fine. All it's got to happen there to be valid with the Constitution is Trump's got to declare his residency back up in New York. In his penthouse.
Problem with that is the timeline in the Constitution for the presidency, the amount of time that you have to be a resident of each state. And I believe the 4 years the predecessor on the back end of being a former president, the state that you declare, you are bound to for 4 years.
I think that's sketchy.
Okay.
I think the fact that he's lived there for years before, I think he could go back to New York with no problem and still run for president. I don't think there be a constitutional challenge on that. That would work.
I would side with that and hope with that, and I would hope that a constitutional lawyer would defend it. But I think that you would find an argument in there in the premise.
Well, you can argue anything. You can argue colors, but
Well, I'm not saying that that's my argument. I'm just saying that would be the fight. I mean, hell, they tried to impeach him unjustly twice.
Sure.
In this battle in the mess, and I think that might compromise DeSantis. Not to mention, DeSantis comes back and says he's not really interested in being the vice president.
Well, you never say that you're interested in it, because if you do, then you're never going to get it to begin with. I think the other one to look at would be Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota. The fact that she never shut down her state or instituted the mask mandates. I think she would also be a good VP candidate.
That's an absolutely astute vision, and I think that would be beautiful, Brian. Honestly, Derrick, Grayson, what say you? What does the ticket look like? Who should be the VP?
Well, there are a number of people that I have seen, but Danny,
I think you would be great.
I don't know. I see Trump going. I hope that it is a non-establishment candidate, not necessarily never having held office. I would love for it to have been DeSantis, but you killed that dream, with your last comment. So possibly the governor of Arizona, the one that's coming out and saying we will not enforce Second Amendment laws coming from Segregation Joe. But other than that, I really have no one else other than I want them to not be an establishment candidate with a track record of that.
So
Mike Pence had a track record.
This is what I've heard mention of is a Donald Trump Trey Gowdy ticket.
I would not like that.
I didn't think that you would, but I heard that today actually, and I said, "Wow."
No. Yeah, I don't need to get into why.
Short and sweet. Okay, we accept that, but we can move on, Derrick. In the essence of saving time, let's cross to the other side, and I'm going to stay with you, Derrick, for just a minute, and then Brian, we're going to come back to you. Let's talk about the GOP votes that came out in this $1.9 trillion debt on our children. What say you?
Listen, we all know what this is about. 90% of that bill has absolutely nothing to do with corona relief. 90%. There is still billions of dollars that they didn't distribute from the last round. This is all about resetting. You remember in the last show, Danny, I said the Democrats were setting their tables back up on their legs and putting the scales back on top. This $1.9 trillion is to offset the overturning of the money changers tables when Donald Trump was in office. All of this money going to these other countries. This is, hey, look, don't worry. We got this now. We're back in control and we're going to make this happen. We're going to pass this $1.9 trillion bills and we're going to set you up. Don't worry. We got you. That is what's happening with this bill. Not a single Republican voted for it. Now, here's the beauty of rhinoism. All the rhinos know that they can say we didn't vote for it. And every rhino supporter will say, well, at least my guy was fighting for me. All of the rhinos, Danny, are now coming out and talking about this bill, but they didn't do that with the first one. They didn't do that with the second one. All of these rhinos, Danny, are coming out and talking about all of the things that the Democrats are doing wrong, but they were silent on them prior to. And all of these rhinos are now coming out and talking about the things that Trump warned us about when they weren't saying a word. It is theater, and that's all. They know that they can safely vote against it and still maintain the illusion of a two-party system where one party is fighting against the other party for their respective constituents. And the reality of it is we have one party that presents an illusion that they are two, but they fight for one objective. And the fly that got in the ointment or the milk in this particular case, was Donald Trump. Alex is gone, but Alex said Donald Trump set the world on fire. He turned it upside down when he got the nomination. And back then I said there will be a civil war between Donald Trump and the Democrats and Republicans, Republicans. Now at CPAC, I heard them ask one of the people, is there a civil war in the Republican Party? And the guy said, no, we're going to be all right. He wouldn't give a straight answer, but there is a civil war. It is rhinos and Democrats against Donald Trump. That's the civil war. And if people focus on that, Danny, and get an understanding of that, things will change. If we can wake up rhino supporters in 2022, things will change. And when Donald Trump returns in 2024, this country will be transformed. Thank you.
My man, Derrick, I love you, man. Hey, coming over to you, Brian Slowinski. And folks, just while you're watching this tonight, if you think that I'm being provocative or challenging my panelists, understand I'm the host. I'm supposed to ask the hard questions, so I'm going to ask you to stay off my back. Now, Brian, coming over to you, the GOP, right? So we see this vote that comes out, $1.9 trillion debt on your children, Brian. Good gracious God. And then the GOP steps back and says, just in Derrick's words, but we didn't vote for it. We didn't do it. What's your evaluation, Brian?
Well, I would say they haven't stood up to the Democrats from the beginning. They should have been standing up for this a long time ago. They should have stood up for Trump when they started the first impeachment. The Republicans on the panel literally sat on their hands while they were putting out the agenda on that, and they should have nailed them on on procedure, just there on the rules of the House, that they should have got up and said the rules of the House state that he should have a chance to defend himself in this committee. If you don't do that, this is a joke. And they should have all got up and walked out.
Right. So due process. I mean,
Correct.
like everything that we all understand to be an entitlement.
Correct. Trump got no due process in the first impeachment, and obviously in the second one, he didn't get that either.
So it appears to me, as what I'm understanding from you and Derrick on both sides of this, that their vote is minimally nothing but a protective layer for them to be able to say, hey, we didn't vote for this. Keep us elected, keep us here. We didn't vote for this debt. But may I remind you, it wasn't all too long ago that they were signing off on some other $1 trillion bills.
Well, and the thing about this too is, Derrick talks about how it's only 10% of it is going towards COVID relief. If you look at all the unrelated projects that are in this, I was just looking something up. There's $1.5 million bridge connecting New York to Canada, $100 million underground rail project in Silicon Valley, $480 million for Native American language preservation and maintenance, $50 million in environmental justice grants. If you look down this list of all the payoffs and the payoffs going back to cities and states, particularly blue states that supported Biden during this thing, that's what it is. This is a payoff bill is what it is.
Well, let's also look at how much money was allocated to the university system to research a whale's male anatomy. That would blow your mind. Hey, Eugene, I see you sitting out there, brother. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us tonight, but I want to bring you in on this conversation as a former candidate for federal office. What say you about this vote? The rhinos all of a sudden want to get online with the people and not put us all in debt for the next 162 years.
Well, thank you, Danny. I'm glad to met with you. And again, I've been saying all along, we must get rid of all this rhino. Without the get rid of all this rhino, we were not going to survive as a Republican.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree with you more, Eugene. And thank you.
Go ahead. And also about the, let's talk about, maybe I'm out of subject or not, but I'm always wondering, why is anybody will start talking about how we go after this Chinese about this COVID? I mean, I don't call the COVID-19. I call the CCP virus. If the Chinese create all this the problem, and they should have to pay for all this. Even they take the 100 years, they have to pay for all this damage done to not only United States, but the whole world. And the Chinese, they're gonna have to pay for all this damage. We lost a lot of loved ones, and all the business been out of the business. I mean, people out of job, and they completely take our freedom away. And I strongly, we have to go after the Chinese about trying to get this, pay for it.
Well, Eugene, I would argue that the time will tell and history will reveal in the cards the right way to deal with this. And I pray that all of us on this panel could agree that the influence of the Holy Spirit and the plan of us going forward in this life will ultimately reveal what we are supposed to do as people. And I think that the facts that are coming out and the facts that will come out will give us all the clarity that we need to make informed and very well-based decisions. Eugene, thank you for joining us tonight and being a part of our panel.
Yes.
That being said, Derrick, I want to come back to you, and allow you to introduce the Constitutional Coalition Organization. I know we've got Luke with us tonight, and Luke, welcome to the show. I'm going to let Derrick open up and introduce the topic. If you'll give me a baseline and a direction, what is the meat and potatoes of what we're doing? And Derrick, if it's okay with you, I'd like to welcome Luke on to present tonight. So Derrick, starting with you.
Thank you, Danny. So let me introduce the concept. And Danny, I reached out to you. I'm hoping that you yourself will run again, Danny, and be a part of the slate that will be put together by the Constitutional Coalition. So what is the Constitutional Coalition? Eugene just talked about rhinos. They've got to go. They've got to be purged. Donald Trump did one of the greatest things that he could have done for American people. One, he showed us that the media lies. That was number one. Great thing, because there was a time when you couldn't tell somebody that CNN wasn't telling the truth. Now it is easy to go and disprove anything that is put out by the media, including Fox, when it does not fit their narrative. And Trump is responsible for that exposure. That's that flashlight. And Scott will remember when I used to say, if I go to DC, I'm taking a flashlight, a broom, and a whistle. Well, Trump with his flashlight. All right. Next, Trump showed us what rhinos are. Now, I've been using that term, Danny, for 10 years or more. Now you hear everybody talking about rhino, Republican in name only. Trump showed us that they will betray you. They will pretend to be one thing and will do something different. I've been saying it forever. And then the third thing that Trump did, Trump showed us that one man can go into DC and can change the room. He changed the room. That is something that I used to always say when people would say to me, well, man, you know, you're going to go in there and you're going to make this happen, et cetera, et cetera. And I say, if a man can't walk into a room and not become like the room, corrupt, he has no spine. But if a man walks into a room and he's got a spine and he stands strong, he will stiffen other spines in that room. He will change that room. And that is exactly what Trump did. The sad part about Trump's candidacy, Danny, is that Trump had to get it done mostly by executive orders. The first 2 years he was in office, rhinos let him down, didn't do any of the things that Trump was trying to do. And I've talked about that before. So the purpose of the Constitutional Coalition, Danny, is put together people like yourself, Eugene Yu, Josie Cruz, myself. I would include Brian in that, but Brian has opted to not run again, and I understand that. But to put together this slate of candidates and put them in seats, because the number one priority is to get our foot in the door. And so we have a board that we have put together. Luke is on that board. Brian is on that board. LaTeresa Jones, who is, you can see her photo there, she is the chairman of that board. Now, I don't know if she'll be able to speak or not, but I invited her to join the show.
Well, Derrick, I'm going to jump in, and I know where you're headed here, but in the essence of time, knowing that, I would like to bring in LaTeresa Jones for just a moment to do her introduction as the chairman, and then bring it back to you to introduce your vision. You know, this is still a coalition in which you and I have a lot to discuss, and I hope to be a member of. But LaTeresa, if you could unmute, if you'll come on for just a minute and introduce yourself here to our guests and talk to us about what your vision is as the chairman.
Well, good afternoon or good evening, everyone. I've been listening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. My objective or my vision is that we have to get people elected to these seats. We have to get into these seats. And in order to do that, I've been in politics for some time now. I actually was a surrogate for Dr. Ben Carson, just a little of my background, when he was running for president. And I traveled with him maybe about 3 months. Like I say, I was a surrogate on his campaign. He opened a lot of doors. But one thing I'll say to you, I know how this works, and it does not work how people think it works. It does not. You have to be able to, just like Derrick said, you have to get in those seats in order to be able to make a difference. But a successful candidate looks a certain way. When I ran for office, actually I ran a few times. I ran for U.S. Senate. And when we talk about cheating, let me tell you something. All of them cheat. So we're not going to sit here and act like that they don't. You know, I'm a realist about this because this is serious business when we start talking about a constitution, when we start talking about our grandchildren and the direction of this country. So for me, with 6 grandchildren, and it's not just about my grandchildren, we all should be alarmed and afraid of what's going on right now. And I tend to hear we don't have a lot of time because just in case people don't know it, November 5th of last year, 2020, they already started working on campaigns. So we do need candidates that are, and everybody knows it was all eyes on Georgia, all eyes on Georgia in reference to what's going on. I think we have a lot of opportunity. A lot of us know a lot of people out here. And we can honestly say that they have money for candidates. I know this 2,000%. And they put money into, and I'll say different parts of the GOP. I speak highly right now of the National Republican Senate Committee because I do a lot of I'll say contract work or work with them. They allow me to bring minority kids into to work on ground games and to different campaigns across the country. You know, if you expose a kid's life, you change their life. And just to get back to what we're talking about, that's why we need solid candidates. We have to be able to compromise because that's what it's going to take. And I suggest candidates read The Art of the Deal. We're looking for people that not just strong in your belief systems, but you have to have a balance going into Washington because look at how they're beating up President Trump. You think they're not going to beat you up? They're going to take you through the water. And this is a fact. And I'll wrap it up as well. But thanks for giving me this short moment just to say we need solid candidates. And there is a good candidate. The recipe looks a certain kind of way. Candidates should have bios when they come to the table. They should choose, people like to jump in these races and they don't realize the seriousness of a congressional seat. These are big boy seats with big boy money and they play big boy games. And this is a fact as well. And this is what we need. And this is my vision to make sure that, if you don't have a viable candidate, you're not going to get the money behind them. And as Derrick is saying as well, if President Trump has put a candidate out there, we're not going to run any candidates against anyone that we know the president is going to get support to, because that would be foolish. It would be detrimental. And I think that's what we have to continue to do as far as these candidates. We have to continue to educate people because candidates are not educated. And I tend to see they think, oh, I ran before. Well, go ahead.
If I could, I'm going to step in and thank you for contributing to the show tonight. And I would also say, look what they did to Jesus. And when
Absolutely.
you see righteousness at all, if you think that they went after the King of Kings and the Son of God, what do you expect they will do to you in your pursuit of righteousness? La Teresa, I thank you. And maybe one day we'll have a conversation about candidacy and what to do to qualify. And you sound like a very well-based campaign manager and strategist. Derrick, Grayson, coming back to you where you were talking about the coalition and your introduction to Luke.
Yes. So to understand the coalition, piggybacking off what La Teresa said, putting together a slate of candidates that can win seats that have been evaluated, and that includes evaluating the candidates. So we put together a board. Because I am a candidate, I am not on the board. The board will operate autonomously. They will look at the candidates, Danny. They will evaluate whether or not the candidate is even ready to run, as well as the seat that they are going to go after. Now, if it is deemed that that candidate cannot win that seat, we will tell them, or they will tell them rather, and suggest a seat that they possibly could win. And if that could be worked out, we would go that route. So that is the function of the board, to evaluate the candidates and to see what's best suited for that candidate to run. And La Teresa is the chairman. Scott Jones is on the board. Brian Lewinsky is on the board. Luke is on the board. Catherine Bernard is on the board. Alex Johnson is on the board. And Ursula, who ran the MAGA event here in Georgia, she had that big corporate. She is also on the board. I don't think she's on the call. So that is the makeup of the board. And I can proudly say that Josie Cruz, myself, and Eugene Yu are three of the candidates that will be a part of this coalition. And we will be announcing sometime in March, after the board has done their evaluation and talked with each candidate on an individual basis, we will announce what we are running for publicly. And then we have a team of volunteers that will be engaged in helping each and every candidate get it right the first time so that we can get our foot in the door. Because if Donald Trump, one man, can go and change the room, we can go and help in that process. And that is what President Donald Trump needs. Not rhinos pretending to have his back, but conservatives that actually has his back and will work hard to get the job done. Thank you,
Now,
Danny.
folks, for those of you that are watching this show tonight, or again on recordings later, I want you to know that if you have the heart and the mindset and the desire to be a candidate for office, all the way from your little city, municipality, through your county seats and commission, all the way to state tier and to federal office, I would ask that you would reach out to somebody on the Grayson Network. Make yourself known, affiliate with our organization, affiliate with all of us. And for those of you that are watching tonight that are asking the question, which I've been asked, Danny, what is your plan and what are you going to do? I will say in time, all things will be revealed. And as I have conversations with my advisors, my supporters, and the people that I stay grounded in, Derrick, Grayson included, with their understanding, I've been asked to do several things, but we will reveal what the best decision is from my perspective, but also for the people. Luke, I want to welcome you to the show. And I can see that you are an excited young man. And I want to start by saying I am thankful that you are involved and that you are engaged. It is all too often that we see in the younger generation of today that video games and apps in the digital realm take over the mindset of the youngers. And we are begging for the youngers to wake up. And so, Luke, I want to welcome you to the awoke side. I want to welcome you to the table to introduce yourself and talk to our people.
Well, thank you, Mr. Danny. I appreciate it. I appreciate everyone on the call. Thank you, Derrick. I have followed Derrick's been early day of his YouTube channel in 2014. I had listened to him. I agreed with everything he had said. I'm involved in politics at a very young age, as you can be here. Trump ban. I love Donald Trump. I was able to vote for him. I am more to help freedom politics die. I love, basically, I'm more Trump, Paul, Prude, Hutby, and Tartan by to being gentle, preaching by. I am a young person, but I'm not into video games. I'm more into the Bible and politics. Well, I believe that it needed more to win. It a good Brown game, a good social media platform like Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene, all been ran social media really well. Another thing that it needed, it did a good campaign website. By having a good website, they visit my website. People, they'll be like, wow, did it tool, did it look expensive, did it look nice. Another thing, did endorsements are also important, like the club broke freedom words, did endorsement, because they ultimately don't matter much, but to people like, oh, wow, they have lots of endorsements, but that will help too. You all talked about running for beats, which are very important. I think Holland right now, Dutch Holland, will run for the Bennett, and I believe he'll have Trump backing. The reason why David Perdue did not run was because I heard from people we know in the R&B, my parents and me, we heard that basically Perdue done made it bid announcement that I'm ball paper I'm in. From people told him, you're not going to get our endorsement. I prefer Holland not to win because I don't want him to be. He probably rhino, but he'll probably did if he runs in the primary because name recognition. Name recognition is very important. Brian Kemp, look, I don't know why people aren't challenging him, but Herschel Walker, maybe. I don't know if he'll run, but that died at the Democrat that became a Republican, maybe, but ultimately you're going to have a big name ID to challenge a turned governor. Well, I do believe it Bible it don't after the congressional rates that you can win that are Republican, like Drew Burlington in the Bird District and Austin Dot in the 8th District, though that voted to allow Biden to win. The only people that are untouchable at the moment for congressional rates, it would be Marjorie Taylor Greene and Jody Heights. Those are the only people that would be that basically you to not beat in the primary. All the others are open dame at Bar Eintenberg. But that's, in my opinion, and betterment of the Georgia rates. And my mom and dad do call me Tarl Robe Jr. We don't like Tarl Robe, but the knowledge I have in here pretty good. But I yield my mic back to you and Mr. Drayton. Thank you for letting me talk for a moment.
Luke, outstanding presentation, and thank you for your insight. You are very well educated and very well versed. If you'll do me a favor, if you'll take your website and you'll put it down in our chat, so that our viewers and the folks on the panel tonight have access to see the work that you do, and so that we have a way to reach out to you.
Right.
I will say your observation about the seats that are secure here in Georgia are well-based. I would love to see Herschel Walker come to the table and have conversations with the common folks like us, and not those that are dabbling in the dollars. And when it comes to Brian Kemp, I would also argue that it is not name recognition that beats him. A TikTok and a meme and all the other social platforms, you can get, 10 million and 100 million hits overnight over one cheeky thing. But with our powers combined, we could make somebody famous in no time. So thank you, Luke, for your contribution tonight. Derrick Grayson, coming back to you, 2 minutes, your closing statements.
Danny, I think all I really have to say is over the last couple of years, I have met some people that have touched my life, and I am hoping that my involvement with them, and fortunately, Danny, that includes everybody that is on this panel here tonight: Lisa, Geraldine, Jim. I don't know if John joined or not. Eugene and I, we go way back. We ran in 2014. One of the things of the Constitutional Coalition, Eugene and I won't be running against each other. So that was one of the big problems. You got good candidates that believe in the Constitution, but they were running against each other. So we're taking all of that goodness and we're going to strategically put it together so that in 2022, Danny, we get our foot in the door. And we are hoping and praying and lifting up La Teresa as chairman of the Constitutional Coalition so that she can move us towards that goal. And I will close with that. God bless you all.
My brother and my man. Brian Slowinski, your final words, last 2 minutes.
I like what I've heard tonight, and we all need to step up and help out. So you need to get out there and get on your social media, talk to your friends and say, we need to help out. We need to volunteer. You don't have to be from the state of Georgia. You can be from anywhere. You can make phone calls, you can talk to your friends, you can do social media, memes, or memes. All that stuff can be done from anywhere. The reason why I'm not running is my wife took a job down in Florida, so I'm going to be kind of in between Florida and Georgia, and I can't make that kind of commitment to run for office here in Georgia. And I think that what needs to happen, and I am very encouraged in what I've heard, is we really need to get together to make sure that we're not stepping on each other. As Derrick said, we need to be very strategic in how we do this, put the best candidates forward, and damn the torpedoes, full steam ahead.
Outstanding. And in the words of my Army comrade, I would say hoa to your sentiment there, Brian. Hey, Brian, when you guys are down there low in the Florida wind and the sands, make sure you send me an address, brother. I'd like to frequent Florida, and hopefully I'll come across DeSantis a couple times and have a cold beer with it. Folks, tonight we've had a great show. We've had several new guests to the show and our commentary. We've had our some of our normal panelists, and we've discussed quite a bit, believe it or not. And I think that one thing we are all speaking very true to, and that is that love conquers all things. There is no doubt in any of our minds here on the panel that if what we're doing, we do in love, that we can't fail. It doesn't necessarily mean, folks, that we get nominated or elected or that we win every challenge. It's just that we can't fail because we build more of a coalition. We hold more hands. We hug more necks. We get stronger. The message grows. We reach further and further and further. See, the Bible says that no one knows the hour nor the day or the time of the return of Christ. And, to be honest, that runs parallel to the rest of our lives. None of us know the hour or the time of day in which we will be successful in our pursuits. But success is relative. I feel already in my attempts to run for the United States Congress that I've been successful. I now host this show with people that I love and that I meet and I build relationships with. And the opportunities that have opened from all of these affiliations have grown and continue to grow. And I am forever grateful. And I can see the impact that all of these opportunities have on the life of my children and my family. And for that, I can honestly say, I don't think I lost anything at all. So, how do I leave you tonight? First, we talked earlier about what some interpret as being the mark of the beast, from the vaccination or the marks that we physically take on our body. I just want to leave you with a thought. This is not a definitive answer, but I want you to think about it. What if the mark of the beast is some way that the system, the government, a vaccination, an opportunity, a construct, a business, or anything of the liking, is to influence what it is that you choose to do with your hand? See, the Bible says that it would be a mark upon your hand or upon your forehead. Well, what if something you administer to your body or expose yourself to compromises whether you are doing good or negative with your hand? What if it is a way of thought? What if it is to change the way you think? A mark upon your head, compromising your spirit in the mind or compromising the heart to where the hand becomes evil. I want you to consider, out of all the opportunities and all the ways that the mark of the beast could be delivered, I believe firmly that the warning that we receive scripturally is that your mind is a treasured place. The Bible says that nobody has access to the thoughts other than the Lord. It's between you and God. The devil and his demons cannot access what is in your mind. Therefore, the mark of the beast would be something that is given to you that compromises your mind. Maybe it is a vaccine. Maybe it's a TV show that you watch. Maybe it's reoccurrent YouTube or games on the platform that are rewiring your very thought process. Maybe it's biological, to a place where you decide you're depressed and want to use your hand to harm yourself or harm others or destroy the beauty of God's creation through that of your own physical act. I would argue that the mark of the beast is anything that takes you out of your spirit by way of thought or action. That's my challenge to you tonight. Stop looking for a tattoo. Maybe you need to look at everything that is trying to take your mind or tell you what to do. Anything that is telling you to wear a mask, to be vaccinated, to social distance, to avoid people, anybody that is telling you to align with the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, to change your sexual orientation from being a scientifically born, anatomy appropriate male, saying that you are now a woman. There is a system out there that is starting to take away your ability to think for yourself and to act for yourself. But hey, what does Danny know? I'm just the host of the roundtable. But I would argue that maybe you should think a little bit about what I'm saying. The mark of the beast may not be something that everybody else can see, but it might be something that you're actually doing. Think about it, folks. Drop the mask, refuse the vaccine, hug somebody, love somebody. And if you got problems, look us up. We're here. We're just around the corner. From all of my panelists here tonight, folks, we've enjoyed it. And I would argue that that is one of our best conversations thus far on the wing. And I would argue that maybe that closing, I would pray, would be the one that shatters your soul. Stop looking for what somebody's going to implant in you with a chip and start looking at what they've already implanted in your mind. If they got into your mind, folks, they did what the Bible said you were designed for them not to be able to do. For me and my family down here in the Low Country, and now I'll introduce you to in the international city in the state of Georgia. Make a note mark of that. Danny lives in the international city. You're going to hear about that more. We bid you an amazing evening from all of my panelists here. We bid you a good night.